What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and welcome back for another episode of Poker Hands. Today we're going to be breaking down a hand that I played over on High Stakes Poker against Persson. Let's go ahead and jump into the action.
This is insane. All these tips coming in. Hayoka again, $10. It's official. Diet Coke better than wine. Pop-Tart again.
Next bit.
20 more.
It's not a bit.
Can we get Sam Hyde, a.k.a. Jason Goldstriker, on this season of High Stakes Poker?
Our hand begins with me opening the King 10 off here under the gun. Little bit of a loose raise, but shh, don't tell anyone. Nobody will notice. The action folds around here. Persson in the big blind looks down at pocket jacks and decides just to call. This is certainly a hand you want to be mainly 3-betting. Every now and then I don't mind flatting, but definitely a hand that wants to raise and build a pot. He calls, everyone else gets out of the way. Let's go ahead and take a flop.
After this one.
55 hundo in the middle, Persson in the lead.
Bigger? Can we play bigger?
Yeah.
Okay, as soon as the $100 over,
Of course, a jack would be an insane card.
The flop comes Queen 9-8 rainbow. Eric checks it over with his pocket jacks, and now with a gut shot to the nuts, I have a hand that certainly likes to bet. I also have a spade and a club in my hand, which blocks some of the continues where my opponent might have a backdoor flush draw. So this hand likes to bet very often, drawing to the nuts and blocking as much of my opponent's continue range as you reasonably can while still bluffing. Typically speaking, on boards like this, you like to use slightly larger sizes because there are way more hands that can continue versus small bets. Now, versus a blind flatting range that Persson called with pre-flop out of the blinds, rather not blind as in he can't see, but blind as in he's in the blinds, there are a lot of hands that can connect with this board, but a lot of hands that are also hands like under pairs. So in retrospect, I can see some decent arguments to make for a smaller size, but I also don't mind using a bigger size like I did and going a bit more polar. Anyway, over to Eric with pocket jacks. He's certainly going to be at least calling. You can maybe argue every now and then to go for a raise because you do block the nuts, but then your showdown value with jacks is going to be ruined because if I could call versus your check raise, I'm probably going to have you beat, and when I don't, I'm likely going to try and bluff you on later streets. You also do block hands like ace jack or king jack that you want me to have. So all in all, I lean strongly more towards a call, but don't hate the idea of raising every now and again. Eric does decide to go ahead and end up making the call, and let's take a turn.
You in?
Oh, how did you summon that?
Ye shall receive. Well, nuts for Polk now.
Goodness.
Middle set for Persson.
Jesus Christ. For someone who talks a lot, you don't fucking just show up and be willing to do the fucking thing. Like, why can't we play bigger right now?
Because
the turn comes a jack, and while a jack screwed me on the last hand I reviewed on High Stakes Poker, this one, beautiful. 3 of a kind here for Persson on the turn, and I've got not just a straight, but the nut straight looking to build this pot. Eric checks it over, and now I have to think about what size makes sense. You do want to check back some straights in this situation, but you typically want to do it when you have just the 10, and particularly when you have a pair plus the 10. The reason is simple. If I have a hand like Queen 10 here, I block Eric from having a hand like 2 pair or top pair. And so when I have just a 10, I would prefer to bet hands like Ace 10 or King 10, where I draw to the nuts, or maybe if I had a hand like 10-7 suited, or maybe if I had a 10 like 10-8 of diamonds, where I don't block some of the stronger 2 pairs and backdoor flush draws and whatnot. But either way, this hand with the nuts is almost always going to want to bet. The question is, what size do we want to go for? Typically speaking, when you end up in these straight situations, you can't go too large of a size because you want to give yourself room to be able to value bet when you have hands like sets yourself, and you want to be able to make your opponent have to call you somewhat wide. We end up settling on a roughly half pot bet here, betting 7,000 on the turn, sizing down a little bit to give ourselves room for all of the reasons I just mentioned. Now for Eric, facing this bet, this is going to seem a little bit weird, but the solver does check raise sets every now and again in these situations. The reason being, you want to be able to have boats on different runouts. And let's just say, for example, I was barreling the turn with a hand like ace king or with hearts or 7-6 suited or something like that. You deny me from having that equity. Also, there are going to be some runouts where you have a chop. So the solver does like check raising with sets in these spots, but it does typically use the lower ones like pocket nines. Anyway, Eric decides to go ahead and call, which is certainly the standard line. Let's go ahead and take a river.
50 more hours of this mind.
Oh, and it comes in for Persson.
I know, it's a pretty bad agreement, right?
Wow. 27-5 in the middle, Brent.
I hope so. But I think we should play bigger.
The nut straight for Polk. Cannot help himself, surely. Going to value town.
He wanted to play 200 more hours.
Here comes the bad news.
I'm really JRB
from the Punisher. Persson.
Are you improving as you go?
As Berkey has said, I'm very fucking bad at, like, he's not good at heads up, but I'm very fucking bad.
There's no way that you're very bad.
So I think that, like, I like Berkey a lot, and I want to give him this really good spot to win a lot of money.
Raise.
And I feel like if we play 200, 400, he can't win that much money.
Big pot, 1 second.
Raise announced how much?
I love watching Doug get fucking check raised.
100 more.
I fucking love it.
Very sick, because we all know what Person's capable of.
Or his YouTube channel, one or the other.
I'm sure Doug saw that merge, the ace-9 versus Robert's ace-king.
Oh, it's 100.
It's like $20 to you, man. You have 2%.
Here's airball.
Even Jennifer agrees. Jen, give an opinion.
I don't have an opinion.
And this is one of those spots where maybe a hand like
And how soon you
Jack
get out of
10 is a better call than King 10, you know, for the boat interference, but I mean...
The river comes a 9, pairing the board, and once again, I've gotten totally fucked on high-stakes poker. What the fuck happens on this show? Every time I show up, I have a good hand. I've got a strong hand. I've got the second nuts. I've got the turd nuts. I've got 2 pair. And every motherfucking time, every single goddamn time, they've got a better... Well, I mean, what do I gotta do? So unfair. I'm gonna burn this fucking... No, I'm just kidding. That over the line, guys. You would never want to say that.
I think I'm gonna burn this fucking place down.
All right, anyway, back to this hand. Eric Persson checks once again. Now it's a little bit of an interesting spot. So in this situation, typically speaking, we're now no longer going to be able to bet a 10 very often. There's no way that Eric should be calling with hands too far outside of a 10. But this is also important now where your image matters a decent amount. Versus Eric specifically, I might be inclined to call a 10 because I have eyeballs and I've watched a lot of poker that Eric has played. That makes the situation a lot more precarious and makes you want to go for value a little bit thinner. No matter how you want to dice it, King 10 specifically is definitely a hand that's going to want to bet for value. Eric can call with a hand like a 10 himself, or have 2 pair, or a 9, or maybe Queen Jack, or maybe he even slow played a hand like aces or kings pre-flop. He also did that in this session. Eric announces raise, and I know that this is going to be bad. I'm hoping it's a small size, but unfortunately for me, it is not, and Eric decides to wager 100,000 additional American dollars. I go into my signature pose with yet another stand-up here, a dejected look, and I try and break it down. My opponent could be trying to bluff with a hand like Queen Jack. My opponent could be turning a hand like Jack 10 into a bluff. Is it possible my opponent also has King 10 and just thinks his hand is still strong? Now, I also have to be worried about hands like 9-8 suited, maybe some occasional pocket pairs like pocket 8s, but I really am not worried about hands like queens or jacks because those hands should be 3-betting pre-flop. One more thing sticks out in my mind. Once again, I have eyeballs, and I have watched Eric play some rather large pots. In theory, this hand, probably a fold. I mean, it's not your best calling hand. You can maybe argue the 10 of spades is a little bit better because you blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into that shit. It's for nerds, bro. It's for nerds. I'm talking about what you feel in your heart. Not what's going on up here, but what's going on in here. I feel like all I do is make big folds, and then the moment I finally step out of line. Anyway, in theory land, I do have full houses here. I do have hands like queens and jacks. I do have some occasional pocket 8s. So I do have some boats, but I really don't have them all that often. It's a very large raise, though. You're probably supposed to fold. I should just fold this hand. But it's Eric Persson. Ah!
Bye, Mr. Persson.
This is sick.
Oh, tough one here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fold.
Great shot here. Through the glass. High stakes poker. Doug has no idea what to do.
How does this compare to the other days that we played?
Agonizing.
Wow, this sucks.
I'm torn here, Eric.
Right here. I know, a little lower.
What a river.
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah. Your lips are great. Yeah, that's perfect.
He's counting out the 100.
Besides Rob winning a lot, like today, it's 2,400. It doesn't feel
And it
right.
goes.
He just paid off.
Yeah, exactly.
Good call for Eric.
Oh, and Chucky
Chucky wanted to take a
simultaneously
closer look.
It's a good call for Eric.
passes out.
Doug is distraught.
Did you enjoy that, Ricky?
Just the hand.
Hope you didn't injure your wrist turning that hand over so fast.
Making up.
That's going to do it here from me. If you want to watch daily Poker Go content, you can head on over to their YouTube channel. And also make sure to check out Poker Go's entire offering of live streaming and episode releases from the World Series of Poker, High Stakes Poker, and more. I'll put links to both those in the description below. Thank you guys for tuning in for once again another beatdown at High Stakes Poker. I'll see you again soon.